Back when I was 11 or 12 years old, my mother signed me up for some summer camps at a local university. The camps normally involved some really basic lessons in coding, which truthfully was more copying and pasting code into Flash. YouTube was fresh out and everyone was talking about this Nintendo nerd guy and his hilarious video on an old Ninja Turtles game. But to end every day, the entire class would play in a huge game of Battlefield, or occasionally a group would go off to the side and play the popular Warcraft 3 mod, Defense of the Ancients. However, I was interested in another Warcraft 3 mod that no one else was interested in, and that was tower defense. And since no one else would play with me, I started playing random Flash tower defense games online. Eventually the instructors knew me as the quiet kid who would only play tower defense games. But what was so addictive about these games that I simply couldn't put them down? Here's a track. At one end, enemies spawn. At the other, your life count. Place towers to stop the enemies from getting to your lives. When you run out, the game's over. Some games have an objective way, while others have a play until you run out and go for the highest score system. And some have a complete this map and move on to the next map system. Some games allow you to level up your towers, some allow you to send waves early for an extra challenge, but in the end, it's a game of patience. If you feel the need to constantly be doing something, this might not be for you. However, if you'd like to set everything up and sit back and watch your work unfold, I'm sure you would easily be able to enjoy a tower defense game. There's something so simplistic in its design. Much like incremental games, which I covered in my last video, the base concept is so simple and doesn't really have a huge learning curve. This, of course, means there's plenty to build and expand on. The game at its core is all about managing resources, making sure you don't leave an area unprotected, and in some cases even making sacrifices in order to go further in the long run. I find with tower defense games that, although the concept is pretty easy to grasp, you still need to slowly introduce new mechanics to your players. Sometimes games will have 10 different towers all immediately available to the player with no reasonable explanation of the differences between them. Jumping from game to game isn't so much of a, well, you've played one, you've played them all, as much as it is a, well, this seems familiar, but something's different. One thing to point out that, in my opinion, there is a difference between a tower defense game and just a defense game. Like, I would not personally classify Age of War as a tower defense game, and I'm not trying to take away from these games, it's just not what I'm talking about right now. A lot of these games generally have some sort of theme attached to them. The most common themes are military themed, which makes sense, medieval themed, which makes sense, futuristic themed, which makes sense, and monkey themed. Well, sure, why not? Now, there's a chance that when I mentioned a set track in a tower defense game, some old school tower defense players might have taken exception, and rightfully so. Some of the more well-known tower defense games actually use an open concept map where the player builds the track that the enemies flow through using their towers. This of course leaves room for much more strategy and variation, such as games where your towers can be destroyed if there's no way through, or other games where the game simply won't let you cut off the path. Enemy design can vary greatly as well, from gray dots to bright colorful balloons. Some games will have different types of enemies, giving some more health or more speed, or perhaps a flying enemy where a specific tower is needed to destroy it. Sometimes you get more enemies per wave, sometimes they just become stronger. Some games have a feature that if you're feeling confident, you can send out waves a little bit earlier and usually get some sort of bonus for doing so. The last thing I want to mention is the towers themselves. Tower variety is really important in these games because it allows you to try out different strategies and keep the game replayable. I also understand the challenge of balancing towers is insanely hard, so to the developers who can manage to pull this off, thumbs up to you. You'll find your standard mix of towers in most games, the basic one, the one that shoots fast but does less damage, the one that does splash damage, the tower that just slows things down, the tower that stuns enemies, and oftentimes there will be an item that you can just deploy on the ground in case some enemies get past all your defenses. Almost always the towers can be upgraded, sometimes with branching multiple pathways, sometimes it costs gold to upgrade, sometimes the towers need experience from kills. Based off of what I've already said, you can see there's tons of variation in these games. Sometimes it's a flash game, sometimes it's a first-person shooter, sometimes you control a character, and sometimes you're just a god from above placing towers down. Just a quick note here before we get into specific games, I am not a reviewer or a critiquer, nor do I really consider this an analysis channel. I'm just talking about some of these games and what I personally think makes them great. This is also not a history lesson, so I won't be going through every game in existence. I also haven't played every game, so I apologize if I miss your favorite, even if you think it's a staple of the tower defense genre. If there's a game you love that I missed, comment down below. I'm sure there are other people who would love to talk about it with you. I'm also aware that there are tons and tons of mobile tower defense games, but I'm not going to be talking about any of them because I haven't personally played them. Now, if you're completely new to the tower defense genre, look no further than Roman Sanine's Tower Defense. The generically named Flash game is a perfect example of what a tower defense game is at its core. One map, one type of enemy, 5 different towers, but enough variation that you'll want to play it a few times to build a real strategy. Each tower can be upgraded to a max level, and they each have their own benefit. Fire towers are strong and cheap early on, but they do the least amount of damage of all the maxed out towers. Water has the most upgrades and by far the most range, whereas the nature tower builds incredibly slowly but ends up being the most powerful tower. There's also a storm tower which has no upgrades, so I don't really recommend it, and a flower tower that doesn't end up really being worth the money you have to save up for it. This game is simple, but it's great. It's exactly what you want from a tower defense game, and when I have an extra 10 minutes every now and then, I give it a play. Now, if I want to find something a bit more complicated, I have to do a little bit of digging. It's not so much that it's hard to find a good one, as much as it is finding one that stands out in a crowd. It's very, very easy for these games to get lost in the shuffle. While the basic tower defense is great if you just want to spend 10 minutes playing a game, if you're looking for a long commitment that is guaranteed to lag your computer at some point, I would suggest Onslaught 2. Onslaught 2 is that perfect step up for those looking for something with a little more depth. It still has your basic tower concepts, but also includes modifying towers, some higher level elite towers, and combos. Combos are a great and unique mechanic that I haven't really seen in any other tower defense game. If certain towers are in proximity of each other, certain combos will be activated and they help out tremendously. There's a list on their site that lists all of the combos, and it can be tons of fun just trying them all out in a sandbox mode. The biggest killer in this game is patience. There's no advantage to sending waves out early, but sometimes the game goes by so slowly and you send a little more out than you're prepared for. There's no objective wave to hit, you just go until you lose all your lives. There's different difficulties and quite a few maps to give you a real challenge. As I said, the game can go by a bit slow, but I would say a majority of tower defense games fall under this categorization. That being said, if you've got an hour to kill and you want a challenge, I highly recommend it. To the exact opposite direction of playing one map for hours, here we have Gemcraft. Gemcraft's level design involves a finite number of waves, tons of different maps, and tons of different ways to change the game up. The main gimmick of the game is the gemstones, which you can combine in different combinations and they do different things. To do this, you need to use mana, but mana is also the health system, so you have to budget wisely. You need to spend to increase your damage output, but if you don't leave enough in the tank, you can get cleaned out pretty fast. The gems go into empty tower slots, which you can also buy and place more. An underrated aspect of this game is being able to move gems from slot to slot. Although there is a waiting period, most tower defense games are pretty final on where you place your towers, but thanks to this you can move things around at the last second if you need to. As the game progresses, you'll encounter harder maps and multiple spawn points. The game allows you to spend points earned in the game in order to give you some bonuses, such as lowering the mana cost for placing towers or creating new gems. Overall, it's a really unique tower defense game, and there's a lot of depth for anyone looking for a long commitment. Based off of me telling you how much I love tower defense games, you may not believe it, but I had never played Plants vs. Zombies until the recording of this video. Call me a snob if you must, but I felt like it was a dumbed down game and not true to the tower defense genre. After playing it for maybe 5 minutes, I can definitely see why it was so popular at one point. It fills every requirement for what I would want in a tower defense game. Sure, it may not have much variety when it comes to the track, but it teaches you as you go, introduces new towers one by one so you get to learn and understand them, has a variety of enemies that present their own challenges, and gives you new obstacles as you go to keep things fresh. I have a love affair for any tower defense game where you can place a tower that makes you money. I also go way too far and end up having way too many money towers that I forget to place towers to kill things. I also love the challenge of having to choose which towers you bring with you when you start each level. It allows for people to play their own personal styles. There isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer. The game occasionally throws different game types at you as well, like having to bowl down zombies with walnuts, a whack-a-mole type minigame, or where it gives you towers on a conveyor belt and you just have to work with whatever it gives you. Is it a tower defense game? Of course it is. Is it my ideal tower defense game? Not at all. Did I enjoy it? Absolutely. If I was trying to sell someone on the idea of a tower defense game and they were iffy on it, I would have them play this. If they get stressed out, maybe tower defense isn't for them. If they love it, well, there's plenty more where that came from. If you were asking me for my pick on a tower defense game to sink endless hours into, look no further than the Bloons Tower Defense series, specifically the 5th installment, which is the one that I'll be talking about here. The game has a very slow start but leads to a very rewarding endgame. You only start off with one basic tower, but as you play and use certain towers, you unlock upgrades for them. You only have to unlock these once, so when you start your next game, you'll have all the available towers and upgrades that you unlocked before. There's a great selection of towers to choose from, and the more you use them, the more you'll find your favorites and preferable ones. There are also different types of bloons, such as bloons that heal over time, cameo bloons that need special towers to detect them, and lead bloons that can't be popped with just darts. Maps are organized in beginner, intermediate, advanced, expert, and extreme. There's also an easy, medium, and hard mode for each map, which basically affects how long you need to go to beat the level, how many lives you have, your starting cash, and how expensive your towers are going to be. You can also choose between 4 different game types: the standard take it wave by wave, deflation, where you get $50,000 for the entire map and can't get any more, apocalypse, which eliminates waves and has continuous gameplay, and sandbox, where you can just do whatever your heart desires. You can also play the map in reverse, where the balloons come out of the exit and go to the entrance. You can also earn monkey money throughout the game, or you can buy it with real money, and that can be used to buy upgrades at the beginning of a map, such as double cash, double range, or halving the health of the most powerful balloons. Once a level is done, you can enter free play and continue to play until your game lags out or you're finally defeated. One feature that this game has that most tower defense games do not is multiplayer. Whether by matching up with a friend or someone random online, you and another player will split the map in half and attempt to beat it together. You don't earn as much money, but you can send money or request money from your partner, as well as just chatting with them while typing. While I really love the idea of co-op tower defense, it is a bit limiting. You both have access to the same towers, the only difference being where you can place them. When one player starts the next wave, it just automatically starts, so if your partner is spamming the button, you better be upgrading as fast as you can. It some way almost feels like you're competing with your partner, especially when there isn't any communication besides, hey, I need money. There's a mentality of, save up money yourself, my thing is more important, and you feel a mix of shame and anger when you lose. Due to the fact that you both have the same towers and played the same map, sometimes it just feels like you could have just played single player instead. Overall, I like it, and it's not something most tower defense games include, but it's not my favorite. Separate to Bloons 5, but still on the same vein, is Bloons Tower Defense Battle. It's not technically a part of Bloons 5, but it uses the same tower system. Bloons TD Battle places you head-to-head with an opponent with 2 different options, Assault or Defend. Defend is your standard tower defense, where your main goal is to outlast your opponent. Assault is the game type that most people play, where you can actually send balloons to your opponent and also face the ones that you would normally have to. Now it costs money to send balloons, but you also gain more money per wave depending on what you send, causing you to look at and analyze the risks. There are many matches where you aren't prepared for what your opponent sends, such as cameo balloons when your opponent can't detect cameo balloons, and it can end things in a hurry. You're also limited to how many towers you can bring with you, which means there's a ton of strategy involved, and you really have to play to the map type. I really like this game type, and it's something I'd love to see more of. I remember seeing Dungeon Defenders and being so excited for a good multiplayer tower defense game. Right off the bat, the game is obviously great to look at. Unlike what I would refer to as a traditional tower defense game, you actually control a character in this game. Now, this isn't something completely original to Dungeon Defenders, but so far it's done it the best in my opinion. What's more is that not only does your character place the towers, you can attack the enemies directly. There are multiple characters and multiple playing styles to choose from, so unlike Bloons Tower Defense co-op mode, it actually feels like there's more of a reason to have another player with you, so that you can get more different tower types. Every character has a different playstyle, with some even being more focused on combat and having no real towers to place. You can also switch between characters during setup, but you have to level them up separately. Enemies drop tons of equipment, some that's character specific, and you can upgrade it, you can buy more, you can sell it, and you can unlock pets to bring along with you. And, as previously mentioned, it's multiplayer. There's nothing more fun than having a buddy tag along with you while you strategize the best way to guard your crystal. And of course, always forget that there are flying enemies and none of your towers are set up to hit them. Besides your traditional towers, some characters place bombs, barriers, and giant spinning tops of doom. As you level up your character, you can hold more mana, which allows you to place more powerful towers. There's a limit of how many towers you can place per level, however you can upgrade your existing ones. There are many games in the tower defense genre where you feel completely safe and comfortable on easier levels, but Dungeon Defenders never really gives you that luxury. You're always unsure if a special enemy is going to come along and destroy everything you know and love, or if your tower is going to get destroyed and you won't have enough time to build a new one to replace it. As you progress through the levels, there will be bosses who come by and rise stress levels to new extremes. There are a few different campaigns and a few different special challenges you can play through, all of which that can be completed on multiple difficulties. There aren't a ton of strategy games I've played with friends that really gets my brain working like this one. Later on, you'll have multiple crystals to defend and you can go back and forth for several minutes on who should place what where. Normally I would say that I could see myself replaying this a few times to try out different characters, but since there's a sequel I haven't played yet, I'll most likely move on to that once I'm done everything I can here. I'm also aware there's a big modding community for this game, but personally I haven't touched any of it. While I'm not too far into the game, I have to say I would absolutely recommend it to anyone who likes tower defense games or just strategy games in general. So why do we play tower defense games? Ryan Clements, formerly of IGN, currently of Deck 9 Games, wrote an article back in 2012 based off of the game Orcs Must Die 2. In his article, he spoke about humans and their natural instincts to protect what we care about, and I tend to agree with him. At its roots, the game is, see this right here? Protect it. How you do so is completely up to you. Whether the mechanics of the game be oversimplified or overly complicated, you are always free to do things how you want to do them. Choose the tower that doesn't do a ton of damage but shoots really fast, or the tower that doesn't shoot very fast but guarantees a kill if it hits. Attack the enemies at their spawn point, or let them come close to your base before wiping them all out. Slow them down, or hit them so hard they won't even know what hit them. The choice is yours. You choose how you want to fight off enemy waves, which towers are your favorites, and how you want to use them. I love strategy games, and sometimes when I'm in the mood to play one, tower defense games are always the first one to come to mind. Even the most complicated tower defense game is really easy to pick up and learn. Tower defense games almost transcend genre entirely, and there are tons of games that have other elements of tower defense games in them. What started as a humble flash game genre has really grown into a great library of games, and while maybe the tower defense scene has been pretty quiet for the last while, the old games still have their charm. thank you so much for watching to the end if you made it this far. My name is Ghostboy259, and if you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe and give myself and the channel a follow on Twitter. Links are all down in the description. I've got a gaming channel as well called JafferDub, so if you want to see more of me, there's a link down there as well. You'll also find a link to the IGN article I mentioned, as well as links to any and all games shown or mentioned. As I said earlier, I probably left your favorite game out. I haven't played them all, but feel free to talk about it in the comments. Do you disagree with a point I made? Maybe I got something wrong? In a few weeks I'll be doing an episode of Escaped Reality, which is a podcast where we go over some of your comments, so feel free to leave something and we can continue the conversation. All I ask is that you please make it civil. If you insult me, I'm not going to read it. That being said, guys, thank you so much for all of you that have stuck around after finding my idle game video. The algorithm really blew it up and it was extremely overwhelming, and I can promise that the next video will not be as long of a wait. Until then, thank you very much and I'll see you then.